The survival pact. The storm. In the summer of 2028, four American teenagers from Denver, Jake, 17, his younger sister Emily, 15, their friend Marcus, 16, and a quiet newcomer named Lily, 14, signed up for what was supposed to be an exciting wilderness camp in the Rocky Mountains. They expected campfires, hikes, and maybe a little adventure. What they didn't expect was a storm so violent it would cut them off from civilization for weeks. When the lightning struck, it tore through the forest like a whip of fire, splitting trees and setting small patches of dry grass ablaze. The counselors tried to guide everyone down the mountain, but chaos broke out. In the confusion, Jake and the three others were separated from the group. By the time the storm cleared, the four of them were stranded with only a half-empty backpack of supplies, no phones, and no adults. The first days. At first, the group believed rescue would come quickly. They stayed near a broken trail sign, eating granola bars and rationing a single bottle of water. But by the third day, hunger gnawed at them, and the reality sank in. No helicopters, no search teams, no voices calling their names. Jake took the lead. He remembered survival, shows his father loved to watch. "We need shelter first," he said firmly. Marcus, athletic but hot-headed, wanted to explore right away, while Emily clung to her brother and Lily silently followed. They found a fallen tree and branches to build a crude lean-to. That night, rain poured down again, and they huddled together for warmth, shivering, their fears louder than the thunder. Fear and hunger. By the end of the first week, they were weak. Hunger pushed them deeper into the forest. Marcus discovered wild berries, but Lily hesitated, remembering something her grandmother had told her. Bright colors can mean poison. Still, with empty stomachs growling, they ate cautiously. Some berries made their mouths numb. Emily cried through the night, convinced they would never see home again. But slowly, they began to adapt. Jake showed them how to collect rainwater using leaves. Lily surprised everyone when she found edible roots near a stream. She wasn't just the quiet girl anymore. She was becoming the sharpest observer. The wolf. On the 12th night, they weren't alone anymore. Marcus spotted glowing eyes at the edge of the firelight. A lone wolf, thin from hunger, circled their camp. The group froze in terror. Jake held a sharpened stick, Marcus brandished a rock, and Emily clutched Lily's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. The wolf lunged once, testing their fear, but the flames kept it back. That night, none of them slept. For the first time, they realized they weren't just battling the wilderness. They were part of its food chain. Part 5, the pact. By the second week, arguments flared. Marcus wanted to risk climbing down the canyon for escape. Jake argued it was suicide without a rope. Emily begged them not to fight, while Lily quietly drew something in the dirt. A circle with 4 lines crossing inside. "It's us," she said softly. "If one gives up, we all fall apart. If we stay together, we survive." The others stared at her, and in that moment, they made a pact. No matter what happened, they would not abandon each other. The river's edge. The morning sun broke through the dense canopy, painting streaks of gold across the damp forest floor. Jake woke first, his stomach cramping from hunger, his throat dry despite the small sips of water they had saved. He looked at the others, Emily curled up close to Lily for warmth, Marcus lying on his back staring blankly at the sky. They were fading, and Jake knew it. That day, they followed the faint sound of rushing water. Hours of stumbling through thick brush finally brought them to a river's edge. The current was swift, foaming white against the rocks, but the water was clear. They dropped to their knees, cupping their hands to drink. For the first time in days, relief washed over them, though the cold sting of the river reminded them how fragile their situation was. Marcus suddenly pointed downstream. "Fish," he said, his voice breaking with hope. In the shallows, silver flashes darted between stones. Without hesitation, he threw himself into the water, splashing wildly. Emily screamed at him to stop. His movements nearly dragged him into the current. Jake pulled back, furious. "You'll drown before you catch anything," Jake shouted. Marcus's chest heaved, water dripping down his face. Then what? We just starve here? We can't live on roots and berries forever. His voice cracked with desperation. Lily, who had been watching quietly, picked up a long stick and began shaping the tip against a jagged rock. We don't have to catch them with our hands, she murmured. Her steady focus silenced the others. Hours later, with sharpened sticks in hand, they tried spearfishing in the shallows. At first, they failed miserably, sticks splashing, fish darting away. But near sundown, Lily's sharp eyes caught the rhythm of the water. With one precise thrust, she skewered a small trout. The group erupted in cheers that echoed through the trees. For the first time since the storm, they felt victory. They built a fire with what little dry wood they could find, roasted the fish, and shared it. Each bite was smoky, tender, and gone too soon, but it gave them more than food. It gave them hope. That night, as the flames crackled, the four of them sat closer together than ever before. Emily leaned her head on Jake's shoulder, whispering, "Do you think they're still looking for us?" Jake hesitated. In truth, he didn't know anymore, but he forced a smile. "Yeah, they'll find us. We just have to hold on." But as the fire dimmed, Lily's gaze drifted across the river. Her face went pale. Between the trees, two glowing eyes stared back at them from the darkness. The wolf had followed. The hunt in the dark. The fire sputtered low as the night deepened, and silence blanketed the forest except for the steady rush of the river. Yet none of them could ignore the gleaming eyes across the water. The wolf had not left. It watched, patient and unblinking, like a shadow stitched into the trees. Emily clutched Jake's arm, her voice trembling. "It's waiting for us. It knows we're weak." Marcus spat into the fire, trying to mask his fear with anger. "Then let it come. I'll smash its skull with a rock." But the quiver in his voice betrayed him. Jake knew better. Wolves weren't reckless. They were hunters. This one wasn't just watching. It was studying them, measuring them. He remembered the documentaries his father loved. Lone wolves didn't waste energy on strong prey. They attacked the desperate, the exhausted. "We have to move camp tomorrow," Jake said, staring into the fire. "If it's following us, staying in one place is a death sentence." Lily finally spoke, her tone calm, but unsettling. "It's not just following. It's testing us. If we run, it will chase." She traced patterns in the dirt with a stick, as if drawing a map of their danger. "We need to show we're not easy prey." The others exchanged uneasy glances. None of them had the strength for a fight. Their ribs showed through their shirts. Their legs shook after hours of walking each day. Still, something about Lily's words rooted itself in their minds. They had to look stronger than they felt. That night, no one slept. Jake and Marcus took turns keeping the fire alive, feeding it branches and broken bark until the flames painted long shadows across their faces. Emily whispered prayers into her hands, while Lily sharpened more sticks with quiet precision, her eyes always darting back to the tree-line. Hours passed, then a sound, a low growl, so deep it vibrated through their bones. The wolf had crossed the river. Branches snapped as it prowled closer, circling just beyond the glow of the fire. Its outline flickered between shadows. Lean, scarred, its coat ragged from hunger. Marcus rose to his feet, brandishing his makeshift spear. "Come on," he shouted into the night, voice cracking. "Come on then." Jake pulled him back. "Don't provoke it." But the damage was done. The wolf snarled, teeth glinting, and lunged into the firelight. For a heartbeat, chaos exploded. Emily screamed. Jake shoved her behind him, and Marcus thrust his spear forward, but missed. The wolf slammed into him, sending him sprawling. Its jaws snapped inches from his throat. Lily, quicker than any of them expected, drove her sharpened stick into the animal's flank. The wolf yelped and recoiled, retreating into the dark, its growls echoing as it disappeared. Silence followed, broken only by Marcus's gasping breath. His shirt was torn, his arm bleeding from shallow bite. Jake knelt beside him, his hands shaking as he pressed fabric to the wound. "It's not deep," he said, more to calm himself than anyone else. "You'll be okay." But as Emily wept quietly and Lily stared into the darkness, one truth settled over them. The wolf would return. And next time, it wouldn't run. Blood and fire. The first light of dawn stretched over the forest, painting the river with a dull silver glow. Marcus's arm was wrapped in a strip of Emily's torn shirt, the fabric already stiff with dried blood. He tried to act tough, sitting upright with his spear across his lap, but every movement made him wince. Jake crouched by the dying fire, poking at the ashes with a stick. His eyes were red, not just from exhaustion, but from the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He knew they couldn't stay here. The wolf had tasted Marcus's blood. It would come back. "We move," Jake said flatly. "Today." Emily looked terrified. "But what if it follows us?" Lily answered before Jake could. Her voice was soft, almost eerie in its calmness. "It will. Wolves don't give up. But if we make the fire bigger, leave it behind, maybe we'll think we're still here. We trick it." Marcus snorted weakly. "And what then? We just keep running until it finds us again." Jake stared at him, his jaw tight. "No. We head toward the cliffs. I saw them on the hike in. Higher ground, fewer places for it to corner us. If we're lucky, we'll find a path down the mountain." Reluctantly, the group agreed. They gathered their few belongings, sharpened sticks, a half-burned piece of wood they carried as a torch, and the last scraps of roots Lily had dug up. Then, before leaving, Jake piled branches onto the fire until it roared. Sparks leapt into the sky. "Let it think we're still here," he muttered. The forest swallowed them as they trekked upstream, the sound of rushing water guiding their way. Hours passed. Their legs ached, their throats dry despite the river's sips, and every snapped twig behind them made Emily flinch. By midday, they reached a steep ridge. The climb was brutal. Loose rocks cut their hands, and every slip threatened to send them tumbling. But finally, they pulled themselves onto a flat ledge overlooking the valley. From up there, the forest stretched endlessly, green waves under the sun. Far in the distance, smoke curled faintly into the sky. Emily gasped. That's a town, right? Or a camp?" Jake squinted. It was too far to tell, but it was their first sign of hope. But before relief could settle, a sound froze them all. The long, low howl of a wolf carried through the trees below. Then another answered, and another. Marcus's face went pale. "That's more than one." Lily gripped her spear tighter, her eyes fixed on the treeline. It wasn't a lone wolf. It was a scout. Silence pressed in as the truth sank into their bones. They weren't being hunted by one starving animal. They had stumbled into the territory of a pack. Jake stood tall, though his hands trembled around his weapon. "Then we stay on the cliffs. We fight if we have to, because if we go back down there," he glanced at his sister, then at Marcus and Lily. "We don't come back." For the first time, no one argued. The four of them stood together on that ledge, the sun dipping low behind them, shadows stretching long across the stone. Below, the forest whispered with movement. The pack was coming, and the real fight for survival had only just begun. The night of eyes. The ledge gave them safety, but not peace. As night fell, the forest below came alive with sound. First the distant howls, long and haunting, then the snapping of branches, the rustle of paws through leaves. It was as if the entire mountain had turned its gaze toward them. Emily sat with her knees pulled tightly to her chest, her wide eyes fixed on the dark treeline. "They're everywhere," she whispered. Jake gripped his sharpened stick, his knuckles white. "They can't climb this high easily. We just have to hold until morning." But Marcus, sweating despite the cold air, shook his head. "You don't get it, Jake. Wolves don't stop. They'll circle, they'll wait, they'll starve us out if they have to." His voice cracked with the same fear they all felt. Lily was the only one who didn't tremble. She crouched near the edge, watching the shadows with an intensity that unsettled even Jake. Her dark hair fell into her face as she whispered, almost to herself, "Animals respect fire. If we burn bright enough, they'll keep their distance." But the fire was nearly gone. They had carried only a single torch, and it was down to embers. With no branches or wood on the stone ledge, the night threatened to swallow them whole. Suddenly, glowing eyes appeared below, dozens of them. Yellow, unblinking, watching from the trees. The pack had arrived. Their low growls rumbled like distant thunder, growing louder as the wolves prowled closer to the cliff's base. Emily whimpered, clinging to Jake's arm. "Jake, they're waiting for us to come down." A sharp yelp echoed, followed by the scrape of claws against rock. One wolf had tried to climb. Its silhouette leapt into view, muscles rippling, teeth flashing. Marcus roared, driving his spear downward. The stick struck stone, missing by inches, but the wolf fell back with a snarl. The others below answered with a chorus of howls that rattled the cliffside. "They're testing us," Lily murmured. Her calmness was eerie, as if she had expected this all along. For hours, the four of them huddled together, surrounded by eyes in the dark. Whenever the wolves drew closer, Jake and Marcus shouted, waved their spears, or hurled stones down the slope. Still, the pack did not leave. They paced and circled, their growls rising and falling like a chant. At one point, Emily drifted into half-sleep against Jake's shoulder, but a sudden snap of jaws below jolted her awake. Tears streaked her dirt-stained cheeks. "We're going to die here," she sobbed. Jake pulled her closer, whispering fiercely, "No, we're not. Not while I'm breathing." The hours crawled by. Cold gnawed at their bones. Hunger twisted their stomachs, and every rustle made their hearts jump. But just before dawn, something changed. The howls grew distant, then faded altogether. The forest fell silent. The wolves had gone, but Lily didn't smile, didn't relax. She stared at the trees with an expression colder than the morning air. "They'll be back," she said softly. "And next time, they won't just circle. They'll strike." Her words hung heavy in the air, and none of them could deny it. The Night of Eyes was only a warning. The real battle was still waiting for them. The trap of hunger. The first rays of dawn broke across the ridge, painting the stone a pale gold. For a moment, the warmth of the sun gave them a fragile hope. But as Jake looked at his friends, Emily pale and trembling, Marcus clutching his injured arm, Lily silent with hollow eyes, he knew hope wouldn't be enough. They needed food, and soon. Their last fish was days behind them. The roots Lily had dug up had been divided into bites, so small they barely filled their mouths. Hunger clawed at their insides like a beast of its own. "We can't stay up here all day," Jake said firmly, though his voice was raspy from thirst. "If we don't eat, we'll be too weak to fight. Or to run." Marcus groaned, leaning against a rock. "And if we go down there, we're dog meat." Emily, tears welling, whispered, "So what do we do?" It was Lily who answered. She stood, staring out across the slope, her face unreadable. "We hunt. We're not the only hungry ones on this mountain. The wolves follow patterns. They circle, they watch, they wait. If we learn their rhythm, we can strike first." Jake blinked at her. "You're saying we set a trap?" "For wolves." Her eyes met his, dark and steady. "For anything that comes close. Rabbit, deer, or them." The idea chilled Emily, but Jake realized Lily was right. They couldn't keep waiting to be prey, so they searched the rocky ledge for anything useful. Marcus broke branches into sharp stakes and wedged them between stones, pointing outward. Jake and Lily dug shallow pits near the path leading up the slope, lining them with sharp rocks and covering them with leaves. It wasn't much, but it was something. By midday, the forest was eerily quiet. The pack had vanished into the distance, but tension clung to the air like smoke. Marcus kept muttering under his breath, swinging his spear as if to convince himself he still had strength. Emily stayed close to Jake, clutching his shirt whenever the wind rattled the leaves. Hours dragged on, their stomachs twisted with emptiness, their heads dizzy from fatigue. Just when Jake thought they might collapse, a rustle in the undergrowth snapped their attention sharp. A rabbit, small, white-tailed, nibbling at grass near the edge of the slope. Emily gasped softly, covering her mouth. Marcus's eyes lit up with hunger. "Mine," he hissed, tightening his grip on his spear. But Jake raised his hand. "Wait, let it get closer." The rabbit hopped forward, ears twitching. Step by step, it neared one of the shallow pits. Then, with a soft snap, it tumbled inside, the thin cover giving way. The group rushed to the trap, hearts pounding. The rabbit scrambled desperately, but it couldn't escape the sharp rocks at the bottom. Lily moved first, ending its struggle with a swift thrust of her stick. She didn't flinch. They roasted the rabbit over a fire scraped together from twigs and dry grass. The meat was lean, barely enough to divide between 4 starving bodies, but it was warm, rich, and alive with the taste of survival. For the first time in days, they ate until the hunger eased. But their relief was short-lived. As night fell, the forest below erupted with howls. Not one, not two, a chorus. The pack had returned, and this time it was larger. The sound rolled up the cliffs, dozens of voices in unison. Emily's face drained of color. "Jake, they found us again." Lily's gaze was fixed on the dark forest below. "No," she whispered. "They never lost us. They've been waiting, watching." Jake's grip on his spear tightened. His heart hammered, but his voice was steady. "Then tomorrow we fight." And somewhere in the darkness, dozens of eyes began to glow again, brighter and closer than before. The first battle. The night came heavy and black, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. The 4 of them huddled near the weak fire, every shadow stretching like claws across the stone ledge. Below, the forest rippled with sound, snapping twigs, padded footsteps, and low, hungry growls. The wolves were no longer hiding. They wanted the teenagers to know they were there. Jake held his spear upright, forcing his trembling hands to steady. "Stay close," he whispered. "Don't run. If you run, you're dead." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, sweat rolling down his forehead despite the cold night air. His injured arm made his grip clumsy, but his eyes burned with defiance. "Let them come. I'll split their skulls open." Emily pressed against Jake's side, whispering prayers under her breath, while Lily crouched near the fire, eyes gleaming in the faint light. She had sharpened her spear to a deadly point and lined up the stakes they had prepared earlier, their jagged edges like a crown of teeth around their camp. The first attack came suddenly. A shadow burst from the tree-line, a blur of fur and teeth. The wolf lunged at Marcus, its jaws snapping shut inches from his face. He roared, thrusting his spear forward, but the wolf twisted in midair, landing behind him. Emily screamed. Jake spun, swinging his spear like a staff. The tip caught the wolf's side, enough to push it back but not enough to wound. The beast snarled, hackles raised, saliva dripping from its jaws. Then another wolf appeared, and another. The ledge filled with movement, glowing eyes circling, paws scraping against rock, growls echoing into the night. The pack had come in force. "Fire!" Lily shouted suddenly, her voice sharp and commanding. She grabbed a burning branch from the fire and thrust it outward. The flames hissed, and for a moment, the wolves hesitated. Their growls rose like a storm, but they did not leap. Not yet. Jake realized the truth. "They're testing us," he muttered. Just like before. The stalemate broke when one wolf darted in low, aiming for Emily. Jake shoved her aside and jammed his spear downward. The tip struck flesh. The wolf yelped, twisting away, but blood stained the rock. The smell drove the others into frenzy. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Wolves charged from all sides, their howls deafening. Marcus swung his spear wildly, barely keeping one at bay. Emily threw rocks, her hands trembling but determined. Jake fought like a cornered soldier, jabbing and striking, each move fueled by raw desperation. But it was Lily who shocked them all. Silent until now, she moved with terrifying precision. She used the burning branch like a sword, slashing it across the air, forcing wolves back with searing flames. When one leapt too close, she didn't flinch. She drove her spear straight into its chest. The beast collapsed with a guttural cry, blood pooling on the stone. The pack hesitated. For the first time, the hunters were unsure. Their leader, a massive gray wolf with scars across its muzzle, stepped forward, snarling, its eyes locked on Jake. Time froze. Jake's chest heaved, his arms numb, his whole body screaming to collapse. But he stood tall, spear steady, staring back into the beast's eyes. Behind him, Emily sobbed softly, Marcus cursed under his breath, and Lily stood silent, her weapon dripping crimson. The alpha growled low, then turned. Slowly, the pack withdrew into the shadows, their glowing eyes fading one by one until the forest was silent again. The teenagers collapsed in exhaustion, their bodies trembling, sweat and blood soaking their clothes. Marcus clutched his arm. Emily buried her face against Jake's chest, and Lily simply sat by the fire, her eyes cold and unreadable. "They'll come back," she said finally. Her voice was flat, certain. "They never lose." Jake stared at the blood-streaked rock where the wolf had fallen, his chest heaving. He knew she was right. This battle wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Ashes of dawn. The first streaks of dawn crept over the ridge, bathing the stone in pale, ghostly light. The fire had burned down to blackened coals, smoke rising in thin trails that stung their eyes. Around them lay the signs of the night's battle. Blood splattered across the rock, broken branches, and the still body of the wolf Lily had killed. Jake sat hunched over, his spear across his knees, eyes hollow from sleeplessness. His arms ached from hours of holding the weapon steady. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest, but his mind wouldn't let him close his eyes. He had seen the way the alpha looked at them before leaving. This wasn't over. Marcus groaned as he shifted against the rock wall. His injured arm was swollen, teeth marks purple around the bandage. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "Guess I'm not cut out to be a hero," he muttered, wincing. Emily sat quietly beside him, her face pale, her lips cracked. She had stopped crying hours ago. Now she just stared at the ground, her hands trembling in her lap. She whispered something Jake barely heard. "They won't stop, will they?" "No," Jake admitted, his voice rough. "But neither will we." Lily was the only one who seemed untouched by exhaustion. She crouched by the dead wolf, studying it with unsettling focus. Her hands brushed through its fur, tracing the scars on its muzzle. She wasn't afraid, not anymore. Instead, there was something fierce in her expression, almost reverence. Emily flinched. "What are you doing?" Lily looked up, her dark eyes glinting in the morning light. "Learning." She lifted one of the wolf's claws, sharp as a knife. "They're stronger than us. Faster. Smarter. If we want to survive, we can't keep running. We have to become like them." Her words sent a chill down Jake's spine. Yet, deep inside, he couldn't deny the truth. The pack wouldn't stop until they were dead. They had to fight smarter, harder, and maybe even darker. By mid-morning, they had buried the wolf's body under stones, more out of instinct than respect. Then they gathered what little strength they had and argued about their next move. Marcus wanted to stay on the ridge. "It's high ground. They can't swarm us here." Jake shook his head. "They'll starve us out. We need to keep moving. Find water, more food, maybe that smoke we saw yesterday. If it was people, that's our only chance." Emily clung to Jake's arm. What if it wasn't people? What if it was just more fire? Lily's voice cut through their fear. "Then we find out. Staying means death. Moving means maybe." Reluctantly, Jake agreed. They packed what they had: 3 spears, a handful of sharpened stakes, and a burning branch Lily refused to put down. Marcus staggered, leaning heavily on his weapon, but he forced himself to walk. Emily stayed close to Jake, her small frame trembling with every step. As they descended the ridge, the forest greeted them with silence. Too much silence. No birds, no rustle of small animals, only the whisper of wind through the trees. The wolves were gone, but the absence felt worse than their howls. By afternoon, they reached the edge of a ravine. Across it, faint trails of smoke curled into the sky again, closer this time. Jake's heart leapt. Salvation might be near. But as they searched for a way across, Lily froze, her head snapping toward the tree-line. "Don't move," she whispered. Jake followed her gaze and saw them. Dozens of glowing eyes, low to the ground, watching silently from the shadows. The pack hadn't left. They had only been waiting, driving the teenagers exactly where they wanted them. A shiver rippled through Jake as realization hit him. They weren't running from the wolves. Herded into shadows. The ravine stretched before them like a scar in the earth, steep cliffs dropping into a rushing torrent of water below. The smoke on the far side seemed so close, just beyond their reach, curling into the gray sky like a promise of safety. But between them and that salvation lay only thin air and jagged stone. Jake's chest tightened as he realized the truth. The wolves had driven them here, cutting off every trail until only this dead end remained. They knew, he muttered, his voice hoarse. They wanted us trapped. Emily's breath hitched as she clutched his sleeve. Jake, what do we do? We can't cross. Marcus swore under his breath, slamming his spear but against the rock. This is it then? They've cornered us like rabbits. But Lily's gaze was fixed on the opposite ridge, her eyes sharp and calculating. No, she whispered, not cornered. Tested. They want to see if we'll fall apart. As if answering her words, the pack began to emerge from the tree lean, silent shadows, their paws padding softly on the stone. Dozens of them, moving with eerie coordination, fanning out to block every escape route. Their eyes glowed like embers, their growls rumbling low in their throats. Jake stepped forward, raising his spear though his arms shook with fatigue. Stay behind me, he said, forcing strength into his voice. The wolves advanced slowly, deliberately, tightening the circle. The teenagers backed toward the cliff's edge, their heels slipping against loose stones. The roar of the river below grew louder, a reminder of the deadly drop waiting behind them. Emily whimpered, "We're going to die here." "No," Jake growled, his eyes blazing. "Not like this." The alpha appeared then, a massive gray beast scarred across its muzzle, its eyes cold and intelligent. It padded forward, head low, ears pricked. The other wolves stilled, waiting for its signal. The air thickened with anticipation. Lily suddenly lifted the burning branch she had carried since dawn. She thrust it high, flames licking the sky. "Back!" she screamed, her voice fierce and raw. For a moment, the wolves hesitated, their circle faltering under the blaze of fire. Jake seized the moment. "There's a way down," he shouted, pointing toward a narrow slope leading into the ravine. It was steep, slick with moss, but it was the only chance. "Move now!" They ran. Stones slid underfoot as they scrambled down the incline, half sliding, half falling toward the river. The wolves snarled and gave chase, claws scraping the rocks. Emily slipped, nearly tumbling over the edge, but Jake grabbed her hand, yanking her back. Marcus stumbled with a cry, his wounded arm striking against the cliff, but he kept moving, teeth gritted. The river roared louder as they reached the bottom, its current wild and merciless. Across it, the smoke was closer than ever. The faint outline of structures appeared, a roof, a pole, something human. "People!" Emily gasped, her eyes wide with desperate hope. But there was no time to celebrate. The pack had reached the slope, their bodies spilling down like shadows with teeth. The alpha stood above them, watching, waiting. Jake turned to the others, his chest heaving. "We have two choices, jump or fight." Lily's eyes never left the wolves. Her grip tightened on her spear. "If we fight, we die. If we jump," she glanced at the raging river, her face unreadable, "we might live." The wolves howled in unison, the sound rolling through the ravine like thunder. The pack lunged forward, eyes blazing, teeth bared. Jake grabbed Emily's hand. Marcus limped to his side. Lily stepped forward, the firelight flickering across her face, calm as ever. "Jump!" Jake shouted, and together, they hurled themselves into the churning river as the pack closed in. The river's trial. The plunge into the river was like crashing into a wall of ice. The current seized them instantly, dragging them under with a roar that drowned their screams. Jake's lungs burned as the water swallowed him whole. He kicked furiously, his grip tightening around Emily's hand. The river was merciless, pulling them apart, smashing their bodies against rocks as if they were no more than twigs. Emily surfaced briefly, gasping, before a wave swallowed her again. Jake fought against the surge, his arms aching, his vision blurring. "Don't let go," he thought desperately. Don't let go of her. Marcus hit the water hard, his injured arm screaming with pain. He flailed with his good arm, coughing, swallowing mouthfuls of river water. The world spun in chaos, sky, water, stone, all one blur of violence. Every time he surfaced, the current yanked him under again. Lily, somehow, seemed different. She moved with the river rather than against it, her body rolling with the waves, her face calm despite the fury around her. She grasped at branches and stones jutting from the banks, using them to steady herself, but she never cried out. Jake! Emily's voice cut through the thunder of the river, faint but desperate. Jake twisted, barely catching sight of her small hand slipping from his grasp. Terror surged through him. He lunged, fingers straining, catching her wrist just as the current tried to tear her away. He pulled her against his chest, kicking wildly to keep them both afloat. Hold on, he shouted, though his own voice was choked with water. Ahead, the river narrowed into a chute between jagged rocks, the water foaming like a beast's mouth. They had no choice but to follow. Marcus slammed against a boulder, his cry lost to the torrent, but somehow he clung to it, dragging himself onto a small, slick shelf of stone. Blood trickled from his temple, but he was alive. Jake and Emily were swept past him, spinning helplessly. Jake's strength was fading fast. His arms felt like lead, his chest like fire. But then, Lily appeared beside them, her hand shooting out like a striking hawk. She grabbed Emily's shirt, then Jake's arm, anchoring them as her feet found purchase on another rock. With a guttural cry, she hauled them toward a patch of calmer water tucked behind a fallen tree. They collapsed there, coughing, choking, their bodies shivering uncontrollably. The river still raged beside them, a monster that had nearly claimed their lives. For long minutes, none of them spoke. The only sound were gasps for breath and the endless roar of the water. Finally, Marcus staggered toward them, limping from where he had crawled down the bank. His face was pale, his lips blue, but his eyes burned. Tell me that wasn't the stupidest idea you've ever had, he rasped. Then, despite everything, a broken laugh escaped him. But, damn it, it worked. Emily sobbed softly, clinging to Jake. We almost died. Jake hugged her tighter, his own tears mixing with the river water on his cheeks. But we didn't. That's what matters. Lily, however, wasn't looking at them. She stared downstream, where the current bent sharply out of sight. Her voice was low, but it cut through their relief like a blade. They'll follow the banks. Wolf can swim, and if they can't, they'll run ahead. Jake's stomach turned cold. He knew she was right. They had escaped the trap, but the hunt wasn't over. As the sun broke through the clouds, casting light across the battered riverbank, Jake realized the truth. This trial had only tested their strength. The real danger still waited ahead, because the smoke they had seen might not belong to rescuers at all. The last horizon. The sun dipped low by the time they dragged themselves farther down the riverbank. Their clothes clung to them like ice, every breath visible in the cooling air. Each step was torture. Marcus leaning heavily on his spear, Emily stumbling with exhaustion, Jake pushing himself forward only for his sister's sake, and Lily moving silently at the front, her dark eyes never leaving the horizon. They were starving. The rabbit's meat felt like a distant memory, their stomachs twisting with hunger, their lips cracked from thirst despite the river at their side. Hope burned faintly in their chests, like a candle struggling in the wind. Then Emily froze, pointing ahead. Jake, look! Across a clearing, beyond a thin curtain of trees, smoke curled once again into the evening sky. This time it wasn't faint. It was strong, steady, rising in dark plumes from wooden chimneys. Roofs broke through the tree-line. A cluster of cabins. Civilization. Tears filled Emily's eyes. Marcus let out a strangled laugh, half relief, half disbelief. We made it, he whispered hoarsely. The howl cut him off. Long, low, and close. Too close. The pack had followed. Their shadows flickered at the edge of the clearing, yellow eyes glinting from between the trees. The wolves had run the riverbanks, waiting for their prey to stagger into the open. Jake's blood ran cold. They were so close. So close, but not safe yet. Run, he shouted. Their legs screamed. Their lungs burned, but they sprinted across the clearing. The cabins loomed larger with every step, wooden walls glowing orange in the sunset. Behind them, the forest erupted with snarls. The pack burst into the open, a wave of gray and black fur, teeth bared, their bodies moving with terrifying speed. Emily tripped, crying out, but Jake yanked her back up. Marcus fell to his knees, groaning in pain, until Lily grabbed his arm and pulled with a strength that seemed impossible for her thin frame. The first cabin's door swung open. A man in a flannel coat, rifle in hand, stepped out, his face a mask of shock at the sight of the bloodied teenagers charging toward him. "Help!" Jake screamed, his voice breaking. The man raised the rifle. A shot rang out, echoing across the clearing. One wolf dropped, tumbling into the grass. The pack skidded to a halt, growling, uncertain now that prey had found protection. Another shot cracked, scattering them back toward the tree line. The teenagers collapsed at the cabin steps, their bodies trembling, their hearts pounding. Emily sobbed into Jake's chest. Marcus slumped against the wall, and Lily finally let her spear fall, her expression unreadable in the fading light. The man knelt beside them, his rough voice urgent but gentle. "You kids are safe now. You're safe." But Jake, staring past him into the darkening forest, wasn't sure. He could still see the glowing eyes watching from the shadows, unblinking, waiting. The wolves had been their nightmare, their trial, their hunters. Yet in a strange way, they had also been their teachers. Because Jake understood something now. Survival wasn't about strength alone. It was about fire, about unity, about refusing to give up when the world clawed at your throat. And though the wolves had been driven back, their presence would never leave him. That night, under a real roof with warmth and food at last, the four of them lay awake. They had survived the mountain, the river, the pack. But they would never be the same children who had hiked into the woods weeks ago. They were survivors now. And deep inside, each of them carried the echo of the wild, the memory of eyes in the dark, and the knowledge that once they had been hunted and they had endured.